Welcome to the Mindset Game podcast. I am so excited to have a very special guest with us today, Ashley Mannell. Ashley is certified in mind-body medicine, and she's the owner of Nourish Health and Wellness Psychiatry, an integrative and holistic mental health practice in Richmond, Virginia. She is truly an expert on the mind-body connection. And Ashley, I'm so thrilled and excited to have you here with us today because I believe the things that you will be sharing with us are so helpful, not only for our mental well-being, of course, also for our physical well-being. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you. You and I met about 5 or 6 years ago, and I've seen you and your practice grow and your expertise grow. Would you be willing to share with our audience a little bit about how you got to do what you're doing today?
I know it's always a very circuitous road and path that I took. But I started out years ago as a registered dietitian, and then went back to school to become a psychiatric nurse practitioner because what I realized in my work as a dietitian was I was just always interested in people's story, in the why, and in terms of where they had gotten to in their lives with their health. And so I went back to nursing school and to go into psych, because I wanted to be able to help my patients more deeply. I felt like as a dietitian, I was kind of limited in what I could do. And so I also felt that at that time I knew that nutrition was an important piece of mental health and wellness. And so I thought that combining the two fields together would be this amazing kind of offering. And when I finished as a psychiatric nurse practitioner and started practicing, and I was trained very conventionally in nutrition and in psych, and so being so traditionally trained, it was hard for me to combine the two, right? And I just didn't know how. I didn't know how to bring in the nutrition into the mental health treatment. I was, really just trained in how to write prescriptions. So that became very frustrating to me very soon after I started practicing. And again, like I'd gone into psych to become a psych nurse practitioner to help my patients. And I just felt like I still couldn't do what I wanted to do. So I discovered functional medicine at that time. And that was really key to helping me bridge the two worlds of nutrition and psych, and really help me teach me how to get to the underlying cause of my patients' mental health symptoms, and really help me use nutrition as one of the major tools to help them feel better, and not medications and not just scripts. And then the more I've practiced as a functional medicine psychiatric nurse practitioner, what I felt was then missing after all this time was really, how do I teach my patients to get back connected into their bodies? And just kind of seeing how our world has changed, how our relationships with technology has changed, just kind of how we all live our lives. What I quickly learned is if I couldn't help my patients to really access what was going on in the body, where the body holds all the trauma, right? Holds all the stress, holds all our anxiety. Then I really wasn't ever helping them get to the root of their symptoms. So you can, I always tell my patients, we can do a great job healing your gut and doing all the testing and giving you supplements and all this stuff. But if we don't deal with the, spiritual, psychological, emotional component of you, then we're never going to get you feeling as well as we can. And everybody has trauma, whether they acknowledge it or realize it or not. And we've just gotten really good over time at like just not wanting to feel the trauma, feel what's going on in our bodies, and our bodies are really powerful messengers. So that has been my path through, kind of where I am today. It's always wanting to learn more and to feel like I can be more helpful And so I got my training in mind-body medicine through the Center for Mind-Body Medicine, based in Washington, D.C. And so that's it. That's how I got here.
Oh, and it's so cool. I'm so glad that you shared that, because clearly you care very deeply about helping people, and it's really neat how you've had an opportunity to do that from these different angles, and then to somehow combine them into this more holistic approach. And when I was trained with HeartMath, we talk about the state of coherence, which is really at the very hub of kind of 4 domains of resilience, right? There's the physical, there's the emotional, the kind of spiritual, and the mental. And it seems like you're kind of referring to those domains as well.
Yes, and it hasn't ever come in any one of my trainings or practice, like schooling. It's just been, everything that I've done has been focused on one area. But when you get into practice and you're working with people in the human condition, you're realizing now it's all of these things have to be addressed, and, and some more than others for certain people. So
yeah, and you talked about kind of that you were trained to basically write out prescriptions, and you realize that there's much more that can be done. And I think a lot of the people listening are at the place where, whether they are the recipients of their prescriptions and they're just eager and open to see what else might be out there to help them, or maybe they're thinking of getting that type of help. And so would you be able to kind of share with us, for people who are not yet familiar, what does mind-body medicine actually mean? Maybe a tiny little bit of science behind that. What do you do?
Yeah. So it's interesting. So mind-body medicine can be used, a lot of different people can say they practice mind-body medicine, and really mind-body medicine has been around for thousands of years. We've actually always known inherently that there's a connection between the mind and the body. We've just intuitively always known that. And over the year, starting, if you want, go back to history, it was starting in the 1600s, really, when there was a separation of mind and body. When, the medical world started really getting interested in anatomy, what you could see with the naked eye, what you could measure, what you could manipulate. And so there was just this huge then emphasis and focus and almost reverence around just the physical body and the wonders of it, right? So anatomy, physiology, that's when dissecting cadavers started, and then we kind of lost sight of, the role of the mind and emotions, and in terms of affecting health, affecting, how we are physically. And that's gone on, up until about 25 years ago, when in the last 25 years, there's finally been this huge body of research that's still growing on actually what has now been called psychoneuroimmunology. So that would be like the medical, scientific, conventional term for mind-body medicine. But what's really interesting is now that the conventional scientific medical world can see these things happening in the body, they can measure them, because now we have these amazing instruments, right? We have these very fancy MRI machines, and we can measure these molecules and these, hormones and all of these things that now science and conventionalism is buying it. But it's been around forever. So it's really the study of, how our mind and our thoughts and our emotions and our beliefs really impact our physical health, our physical being, and how the body holds on to, like our nervous system holds on to stress, to trauma, to childhood dysfunction, to things that we're exposed to, and that in turn, really affects kind of the other piece of it, the mind and thoughts and our emotions and all that. So it's to me, it's that the connection between the mind body has always been there, but science and the medical establishment has only now finally decided that, yeah, okay, it's true, they're connected. One affects the other, but only now because we can measure it and see it, and we have proof. But we've known it for thousands of years.
Yeah. And
So,
thank you for sharing that. And I think a lot of people intuitively know that. I mean, when they're not feeling as well emotionally, the body, is impacted as well. Maybe they're more tired, there's more tension, or maybe some other symptom. Or of course, there are, that's more evident when it comes to dis-ease in the body. So would you be willing to share maybe just like an example or two of how the mind and emotions impact the body from what you've seen, and how people have shifted their health as a result of shifting their thoughts and their emotions?
so, I mean, I think if you think about just how we respond to stress, right? So how we perceive stress when we're feeling stress and experiencing stress, kind of what that physical manifestation does if we just tune in, so not just like on the spot changes, if your hands get sweaty or your heart rate starts getting elevated and your blood pressure goes up and your muscles start tensing, like, because you're perceiving something very stressful. But there's also just long-term effects of that. So if you're stressed for long periods of time, your blood sugar levels stay elevated. The stress hormones stay elevated in your body and cause inflammation. So inflammatory markers can be elevated. Your gut health is very much affected too. I mean, we all know, kind of, especially as women, when we're stressed, like, we just don't digest as well. We don't, and so there's a real connection there in terms of, with the mental and the physical. So yeah, so I think it's, and then it's when you're exposed to that kind of stress as a child, so I do a lot of work around, the ACE study. I don't know if you're familiar with the adverse childhood experience
I am,
study
but
that
our
was,
listeners might not be. It's
yeah.
actually very fascinating. Would you
Okay,
be
so
willing
very
to share a
fast.
little bit?
Yeah. So it was a study that was conducted in 1998 out in California through Kaiser Permanente, which is a huge healthcare system out there. And the researchers wanted to figure out if there was a connection between certain exposures in childhood. So exposures to stress, and there's 10 specific, even though there really are many more today that we can identify, but there were, and you can look up the ACE questionnaire, it's easily available online. But if you were, for example, as a child before the age of 18, if you grew up in a household where someone had mental illness, where someone was, if your parents divorced, if you were, felt unloved, if you felt, there's 10 different ones. And if you can say yes or mark one to any of those 10, that gives you an ACE score. And that ACE score very much correlates with your risk later on of developing certain types of autoimmune disease, of digestive disorders, of cardiac events, of cancer, of depression, all these things. And that was independent of whether people smoked or drank or were overweight. So if you had someone who was perfectly physically healthy and they had an ACE score of 3, say from childhood, they were more likely 10 years, 15 years down the road to then develop, some kind of disease.
So some people listening right now, Ashley, are thinking, oh my God, like I've got all of the above, and maybe more. I mean, is there something that they can do to reverse that, to change that? I mean,
So it's interesting. So with my clients, I always tell them, they always ask, why do you want to know about all this stuff that happened in childhood? Like, why does it matter? Why, I have all of my patients have to take an ACE inventory before they even meet with me. And so I tell them, I say, it's not, we can't change your past, right? It's not, we can't go back and do that, but we can help you change your story about why it is that you're feeling so bad today, right? So it's not, because people will come into my office and say, I'm depressed. They come to me for all sorts of different reasons, but usually depression, like insomnia, anxiety, and then also difficulty losing weight, and just feeling sluggish and just not feeling well. And they think it's their fault. They think it's like, well, I knew better. Like I don't exercise and I crave sugar, and so I don't eat well, and I eat fast food and I don't have time. So there's this story that they have that it's because of them and their failure, and that's why they're not feeling good. But when we go back and we can look at, as a child, you were exposed to a lot of things that were stressful. And again, we can't change it. We're not blaming your parents for giving, it's none of that. It just helps to shape the story in a different way. And that can be really empowering. And so, and to see people's symptoms, like mental health symptoms and physical symptoms through that lens of, it just is so, it's just so validating for our patients and clients. And it's such a, there's just, it's not a diagnosis that I'm giving you. I'm just I'm understanding your story through just the lens of trauma, right? And we all have trauma as humans. Like, just being a human is a traumatic experience. And so treating that depends. So it really, there's a lot of different things that we do. It depends on what the patient is ready for. There are many times when, we will talk to our patients, and if they have never gone through therapy and there's a lot of psychological distress, they're, say, anxious, or they can't sit still, or they just, they don't realize that they've had all this trauma. They've never processed or unpacked it. We'll actually just say, this is not the right time to start dealing with the physical stuff. Like, you first have to get some support with a therapist. And we're experienced stuff. We've been doing this for years, that we know when that's the case. And then there are other people who are definitely who have done some of that work and are ready to finally heal their gut, improve their nutrition, and do the lab work and all that. But that whole process in itself sometimes can bring up stuff that they didn't even realize was there. So it's this constant reassessing of what people need, and that's why I needed I just seeing the impact of stress on people, whether it's stress from childhood or stress from the current situation that they're in, or just the stress of daily living, of being a human. It really is what fuels kind of all of the disease, right? And why people are feeling so bad. It's just, I needed tools, and that's why I went into mind body medicine. It's like, I need to be able to show people that they can resource themselves, that they can manage the stress, that when you get anxious, you can focus on your breathing, and that will stop you from being anxious.
Wow.
And these are just very simple interventions that really help calm the mind, right? If you can calm the body, then you can calm the mind. And that's where the connection happens. And you practice that over time. It's really powerful, and it's really transformative. So yeah, that's kind of like I don't even remember what your original question was, but that's, that's how it just depends on where the person is in terms of how we're going to help them start addressing their health concerns and that.
Well, I imagine that a lot of the people listening today are, first of all, thinking, wow, maybe that's why I feel the way that I feel. There's some kind of a level of understanding that it's really not their fault, that there may be a deeper reason for why they're behaving and kind of making the choices that they're making that have leading to their physical, mental, emotional results. And there's a sense of hope, because what you're sharing is that there are certain tools, things that they can do themselves, or maybe perhaps in a group setting, that will allow them to feel more ease, in their body. And then, of course, to allow the mind to heal as well. So would you be willing to share what are some of those tools, maybe even guide us through something that, people can start to practice right away to feel more energized, to be healthier, and, be able to interact better with others. Because that's the other thing. When we're feeling kind of sluggish or low energy or not well, we also kind of, impact other people, whether it's our children or our partner or spouse or clients and so on. So what do you recommend? What can we do?
So I take my, so I'm going to just talk a little bit about my training in mind body medicine. I was trained through the Center for Mind Body Medicine, and the way that we are trained is so I will teach these skills individually to patients in the office, but I actually run mind body skills groups, because part of what happens in healing is really that connection with others, right? So it's not just learning the skill and learning it one-on-one with me in the office, but it's the power of the group setting and learning the skill together and watching what comes up for us as you practice that skill. Like, because the skills, such as breathing, guided meditation, guided imagery, journaling, shaking and dancing or movement. We also do genograms. So we do family of origin work. All of these things really kind of help release the emotions, release some of the trauma that gets stored in the body, release that stress. It's another way out. And we have kind of the way we live our lives now, like we have more ways. It's much more easier to ignore and to avoid the stress and the discomfort and the uncomfortable emotions than it is to kind of let them rise. And really what's important is to help move those out. And honestly too, it's hard for people, some people are not ready to do talk therapy. Some people, or they've done it, they need something different. And what I love about this model is it's just being in a group with 8 or 9 other people and learning these skills together and having this safe place where you can be vulnerable and share and connect and realize that, you're not the only one that, that's going through this. You're not the only one who's suffering. So, and that other thing too, is there's some people who can't just sit still and breathe for 10 minutes. Like they have too much trauma and that to them is not a safe practice yet, but maybe journaling is okay. Or maybe shaking and dancing and moving is something that they can do. And so it's important to really give people like different exposures to different things that can help kind of ultimately have the same outcome, which is just to help release these emotions and create awareness around that.
So when you speak of these tools like journaling or kind of dancing, shaking, or, breathing, you're talking about releasing emotions. What does that actually mean? This might be the first time some people are hearing this. Like, what do you mean by that?
So just notice. So maybe releasing is not the same, but maybe noticing kind of what comes up, right? Mm-hmm. So if we, and these exercises are guided and they have, directions and so just noticing what came up for you when, one of the journaling exercises is dialogue with a symptom. So we ask our participants to pick a symptom, whether it's a physical symptom like pain or, I have had a lot of patients who write a dialogue between them and their depression or them and their anxiety. And when you can kind of get them into a quiet, you have everyone kind of get quiet and close their eyes and take a few deep breaths and then just write the dialogue out. And it's amazing the wisdom that can come out of that's in them, right? And so it helps people reconnect with their inner knowing, their wise guide. And again, with the kind of the greater outcome or objective being reminding people that they have that wisdom and that capacity to heal in themselves. That it's not me that's doing the healing for them. It's not anything out there. It's all in them, and they need that to be reminded of that it's there. Mm-hmm. So it's maybe not releasing as much as like just. I kind of think of it as releasing, but like watching it come up, like oh my God, didn't know that was there.
Yeah.
That exercise brought up something, or even if it's not something that comes up from the experiential that I take them through, but it's like, oh, when Vared shared that about her experience, it brought up this emotion in me. And so it's a constant, just like
Yeah.
witnessing and in a safe
Oh, yeah.
spot.
I,
So
I just think it's brilliant to be able to pause and connect and accept, connect with and accept what's actually happening in our experience, whether it is an emotion or a physical symptom or something that's happening in our body or in our life. And to trust that intuitive guidance, because it really is very informative, and it comes up for a reason. So I think it's really cool that you are introducing these tools to us, and specifically what to do, and also to reflect, like, let's say after we're dancing or shaking, to reflect on what's coming up, because that kind of loosens something up in the body, and perhaps there's something that comes up. And you talked about emotions kind of being in the body, almost like stuck in the body. I forget the exact word. I mean, how do we know that's true, that emotions or that trauma, from childhood, that actually gets stored in the body?
So, I mean, there are lots of different kinds of research and science to back that up. And so, I mean, they can measure, they can do brain scans now to show how trauma and stress changes your brain, and they can measure hormone levels, and they can look at how genes get changed by trauma, right? So genes can get turned on and turned off because of exposure to acute or chronic stress. Um, and and I think that, like, if you just and you can measure vitals, right? You can measure blood pressure, and you can measure, before and after these exercises. Like you can, we do that. We have one called autogenic. So our heart rate variability is one of those that you can measure. Like, what is it like before you do the exercise, and then was it like after? And so it shows people that you can absolutely change your physiology. But if you're thinking about, like an anger, even if you just have, it's interesting. Research has shown that if you have like a very traumatic or stressful situation in the moment, we can measure, all of the changes physiologically that are happening in your body. But the same is true as if you just have a memory of that, right? Like if you just remember that very stressful, like if you remember that your boss like embarrassed and humiliated you in front of your entire team, and you can remember it, you can hear the tone of voice, you can hear, that, like, you'll have that same physiological reaction as if he was standing in front of you doing it, So, over time, it's just, you have to move it out, because people will develop physical symptoms from it too. I mean, chronic pain, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, a lot of these, this is what happens from that.
Oh, it must be so rewarding for you and your team to witness people like releasing these physical ailments, when people release some of those emotions from their body, to be able to finally become conscious of those repressed things.
Yeah. I mean, it's like how you feel after you've had like a really good cry, if it's been so long since you've had like a big meltdown, and it feels good to some, it's like this real, you feel tired, but you feel that release, and so it's, if people just, I think, paused and sat still and could tune in, they would really realize that I can just let this go. I physically feel lighter, or I can, take a bigger breath or something like that.
Well, are you flexible to share with us today maybe something that'll actually take us through that? Because some people, like I said, are kind of, this might be new to some of us and want to experience it.
Absolutely. So one of my favorite meditations that I always start every group like this. Actually, now, thanks to you working with you, and it was, I start all my presentations with this breathing exercise just to center everyone, right? Just to land land us all in from our day. And or if I have a patient that comes in that's like, I can feel their energy, it's like, let's just breathe together. And I love it. So this is called soft belly. And it's just one of the many forms of meditation that kind of is aimed at inviting a relaxed state. And relaxation really is the basis of all kind of mind-body therapies. And the more you can practice kind of a meditation like this or soft belly breathing, the more you're going to notice like the powerful effects on you. And I love this because it's simple and it's something that you can practice anytime in any place. And the key word there is practice, right? Like this is something that I ask my patients to commit to doing at least once a day, because it's not just something that you can rely on in an emergency or in that, it's like a muscle that you have to exercise to really teach. We're trying to teach our nervous system to just go back into the relaxation state, right? From sympathetic to parasympathetic. And if we've had stress and trauma for so long, our natural mode is just constant stress, fight or flight all the time. But we can teach our nervous system to just switch over. So without further ado, I'm going to ask you to make yourself comfortable in your chair with your feet planted flat on the floor. And go ahead and take a deep breath in. And if you're comfortable, allowing your eyes to close to remove any external stimulation. But if you're not comfortable closing your eyes, then just finding a soft gaze on the floor is fine. So relax and breathe deeply. Breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. And allow the breath to deepen. Allowing each exhalation to relax you a little more. And allow your belly to be soft and relaxed. If your belly is soft and your abdominal muscles are relaxed, then all of the other muscles in your body begin to relax as well. And to encourage this process, you can say to yourself, soft as you breathe in, and belly as you breathe out. Soft as you breathe in, and belly as you breathe out. And if your belly is soft and your abdominal muscles are relaxed, more air goes to the bottom of the lungs, allowing for better oxygen exchange. And this helps to feed all of the other cells in your body. And when the belly is soft and relaxed, it helps to activate the vagus nerve. And this nerve, which means wandering in Latin, wanders up through the belly, through the chest, to the central nervous system, to the brain, and it quiets the body. It slows the heart rate, improves digestion, lowers blood pressure, and helps the muscles to relax. And it also quiets the mind. And the vagus nerve is the antidote to the fight or flight response. Breathing in through your nose, soft. Out, belly. And if thoughts come, just let them come and let them go. And just gently bring your awareness back each time to soft belly. If you feel tension anywhere, just imagine the in-breath going there, and the out-breath taking tension away with it. And as the tension leaves, bring your attention back to soft belly. Now, I invite you to take a few more breaths in and out. Deeply inhaling, and deeply relaxing on the exhale. And when you are ready, go ahead and float your eyes back open gently. And come back into the room.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
Wow.
Always use some soft belly breathing.
Wow, that was just so relaxing and so wonderful. And this is the first time I've been guided through that particular meditation, and it was just peace. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, how can people learn more about you, more about your practice, your groups?
So I invite everyone to visit my website, which is www.nourishhealthandwellness.com. And I have all the information about my practice there. We always encourage people to do free phone consultations with us if they just want to learn more about us or learn more about functional medicine or just the work that we do in general. And I am on social media, on Facebook and Instagram, and I will have a designated page on my website for just the mind-body skills groups that I'm running on a continuous basis. I also really encourage people to look up the Center for Mind-Body Medicine. There's a lot of wonderful information on there about this work, and also groups that people can join that are ongoing, that are offered virtually. Now that we've all been trained to offer these groups online, it's easy to find one that's getting started. So, yeah.
Oh, thank you, Ashley. Today was just, our conversation was just such a joy. I think a lot of people, like I said, intuitively know about the mind-body connection. Some people may have had some training, some people not yet. And just knowing that there are tools out there, like what you've trained us on today, that people can listen to again and again every day to train their body to just feel more ease and release some of that stuff that's been stored up for probably many, many years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you. Such a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed our conversation so much.
Me as well.